Welcome back, I'm Kim Bailey, and this is Inside Exec. As we continue our series looking back over the last decade of the podcast, today I'm going to pull an episode from the archives, our 2019 discussion on the L.O.R.E framework: listen, observe, reflect and engage. When Fuliana and I first talked about this, the business climate was very different. We were talking about leaders who were natural fixers and the pressure of being told to do more with less, using the human resources available. The core human behaviour, that eager executive who wants to jump in and solve every problem before the sentence is even finished, hasn't changed one bit. But what has changed dramatically is the workplace around that executive. Today, teams are smaller. Routine processes, technical troubleshooting and baseline analyses are increasingly automated. The machines are doing a lot of the everyday fixing. So what happens to the traditional fixer boss when the environment no longer needs them to fix the small things? Today I'm going to revisit the L.O.R.E approach and discuss why stepping back to listen and reflect is actually the key to surviving and leading in a highly automated world. Now, I think it's probably appropriate to go back and go over the framework to start with. So the L.O.R.E acronym serves as a tool to help leaders pause and process situations rather than acting on impulse or reacting on impulse. L is for listen, and the first step requires you to truly hear what is being said rather than using that time to immediately formulate solutions or decide on outcomes. The O is for observe, so that involves stepping back to look at the situation at arm's length without getting involved. It means paying attention to the whole environment, including people's reactions and the context of the situation. R is for reflect. Before speaking or taking any action, you must give yourself the time and space to think about your observations. Interestingly, taking physical notes with pen and paper during this stage establishes your thoughts far better than doing it digitally. And we talked at length about that, how that physical act of writing things down is actually better for you in terms of reflection than trying to take digital notes or a recording, in fact. E is for engage. Once you have listened, observed and reflected, you can finally engage. Importantly, engaging might mean getting actively involved, or it might mean making a conscious decision to do nothing at all. So how does that framework fit into today's business climate where we are working with much smaller teams? And so what we first of all need to look at is that we have to move from being the fixer to being the catalyst. Let's look again at the acronym. So L for listen. Listen to the silence and to the noise. With smaller teams, each individual carries more operational weight. Listening means truly hearing how team members are interacting with new automated workflows rather than immediately formulating solutions or jumping to conclusions about the technology's effectiveness. O is for observing the human-tech dynamic. This requires sitting back and taking things at arm's length without getting involved still, but we need to look at how the team is actually functioning. Are they truly able to do more with what they have, or are the automated systems creating invisible bottlenecks that you wouldn't notice if you just jumped in and did that process yourself? R is for reflecting off-screen. In a highly digital, AI-driven environment, the act of physically writing things down with pen and paper is more critical than ever before. It forces a cognitive break from the screens and the dashboards, allowing you to synthesize what your human team actually needs, like emotional intelligence or creative strategy, that the automated systems cannot provide. E is engaging with intentionality. When you finally engage, it's not to fix the code or to rewrite the prompt. It might mean getting involved to coach a team member through a complex creative problem, or it might mean making a conscious decision to do nothing so the team learns to leverage their new tools independently. In that original broadcast, Fiona brought to us a case study, I guess we could call it, that talked about someone that she was mentoring at the time and a discussion that they had had about applying this kind of management skill to the situations that he was faced with, because he was a fixer, always a fixer, and even when she was talking to him, he would finish the sentences that she was saying. So if we revisit his situation, not him specifically, but his situation, and think about an executive in that role and what dilemmas he might or she might face at this particular time, because we're asking them to move from being in the fixing role to being in the catalyst role. And that would be very hard if you were looking at your peers in other organisations that are also at that C-suite level and they're not doing the same thing. It leads you to wonder then whether you're devaluing your own corporate worth in terms of future opportunities because you're doing things so very differently to what you see your peers doing in their organisations, which essentially are faced with the same challenges as you are in your organisation. So let's break that down and see what we could address in terms of thinking about that situation. If you've got peers who are still jumping in to fix every problem, they obviously will look incredibly busy and productive, but they're playing a dangerous game. In an increasingly automated landscape, if your primary value is rapid, routine problem solving, you are essentially competing with machines, with algorithms. You become a highly paid bottleneck. At the highest levels of the C-suite, having the right answer to a known problem is no longer the premium skill. AI and data analytics handle a lot of that. The premium skill is managing ambiguity, asking the right questions, and building a resilient human culture that can adapt to rapid change. So it's about leading people. It's about the human interaction. You are the human in the loop, as we say. A fixer scales linearly. They can only fix as many problems as they have hours in the day. A catalyst, on the other hand, scales exponentially. By using this L.O.R.E framework to step back and empower your team, you're proving you can build organisational capacity that functions without constant intervention. That is what boards look for in a top-tier executive. So how would you redefine the metrics of your success? If your old metric was being the fixer, how many critical issues did I personally resolve this week? Your new metric needs to be, as the catalyst, how many critical issues did my team resolve without needing me, and what strategic initiatives was I able to advance that freed up time? And in a sense, you can use that L.O.R.E framework to look at your own situation and manage your own career anxiety. So if we look at the listen and the observe, the L and the O-R, look past what your immediate peers are doing and observe what top performing boards are actually demanding of CEOs today. It's rarely micromanagement, it is vision, strategic foresight and talent development. The reflection side of it, the ego check, you need to honestly reflect on why you want to jump back in. Is it because the business truly needs you to, or is it because your ego misses the dopamine hit of being the hero? And the E for engaging is about upward communication, which we have talked about a lot on this podcast. Your job is now to narrate your new value. When discussing your achievements, you have to shift your language from I solved X to I structured the team to processes to handle X, which allowed me to focus on our long-term strategy for Y. That kind of a shift requires a massive amount of quiet confidence. It means being comfortable with silence while others are making noise. I'd want to leave you now with some questions to challenge your own perspective on your leadership value. The first one goes back to the ego check. When a challenge crosses your desk this week, are you jumping in to fix it because your team genuinely lacks the capability, or are you jumping in because you miss the familiarity of being the hero? Number 2 is about value propositions. If your primary metric for your own corporate worth is how many fires you personally extinguish, what happens to your C-suite viability when automated systems prevent those fires from starting? The catalyst shift is number 3. In an environment where technology handles the routine fixes, are you acting as the catalyst to make your human team the best they can be, or are you competing with the algorithms for tasks that you should have outgrown? And the last one is the L.O.R.E challenge. What would happen to your team dynamic if, for just the next 48 hours, you strictly applied the R in the L.O.R.E and forced yourself to reflect in silence before engaging with their problems? I'll leave you with those thoughts today. It's not an easy transition to make, especially when you've built a successful career as the ultimate fixer. So if these questions resonate with you, or if you're looking at your own peers and wondering how to navigate this shift in corporate worth without jeopardizing your trajectory, we know that can be a complex path to walk alone. For those who need to or want to unpack this further, you know where to find us. So reach out to us if you need us, but for now, I'm Kim Bailey and this is Inside Exec.